Yes. So if you are showing up and you have to leave, like after 30 minutes or something, no worries. I'm expecting the call maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Just hop out and you can go back and watch it on the portal. It'll be uploaded there as soon as we're finished. Okay. Thank you all, first of all, so much for taking this course and experiencing this with me. I really, really, really appreciate it. Sorry, I'm just going to mute somebody. Um, this is the third time I have run this course challenge. I never really know what to call it. In directly before Empowered Performance. And the reason I created in the first place is I had people coming into my course, which is like a bigger mentorship 12-week course. And it's like a lot of information to learn. And I realized that people were really excited to come in, but they didn't even have the basics down. Like just, they've never even understood that they had a diaphragm and that it was something important, that it could impact movement. And so I really realized that in order to get everybody on the same page, there were just some basic things that actually aren't that basic. Once you get into this course, you realize like, oh, this is like a lot of information. But I knew that if they understood this from the beginning, that everything else would come so much easier. And so that's why this course exists. And so I always leave it up on my website. And during the year, you can go and sign up and just have access to it by yourself. But I like to have some live interaction where I'm there on the community page to answer your questions if you have questions about things as we go along. So that's mainly where you're going to find me this time on this call. And then me, and there's going to be a lot of members of the Empower Performance Academy that are also going to be in the community page. So they might be answering your questions as well. So you get to go on there. If you want to post a video of yourself doing an exercise and get some feedback, that's what that's for. And for today, I thought it would be really nice for you guys to talk to some of the people that teach for Empowered Performance or have been in the community for a really long time and learn some of the strategies that are most important to their businesses and the people that they work with. Just to go over, because I think it could be a little confusing when you first get into the course. Once you log in, you go just to the main login, which you can access from my homepage as well, KatieSt.ClairFitness.com. If you look on the right little hamburger, there is a login button. You just click that, sign up. If you didn't, for some reason, get your sign up link, it might have gone to spam. You can always email me if you need to. What we're going over, and we're going to talk a little bit more about today, is mastering the breath. So that's the foundation, number one. And the reason that that is the most important part of everything, in my personal opinion, but I'm starting to see that that is becoming a little more mainstream, is because it has the capacity to influence all of our movement options. If we can't get the diaphragm to allow for full excursion, then we won't be able to push pressure into different parts of our body. And I can work on a joint in different segments of the body all day long. But if I don't optimize the way the interaction of the ribs and the pelvis themselves have on those relative motions at the joint level, I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse. And I'm missing out on opportunity for improved variability and range of motion that I might not have to steal by cranking on a joint and using soft tissue to get there. So when we talk about the breath, what we're really trying to do in this first foundation is create a focus of just the diaphragm being able to come up and down. And what does that feel like in the body? How do we get that right for you? I'm giving you options in the portal. I want you to go over 3 different exercise positions because different positions work better for some people than others. And in my course, we go over why you would do those positions, but it's okay to just try them. See which one gives you the most amount of expansion. The places we're trying to expand are really chest wall, the back, upper back, and lower back. And we really want to start to kind of contain the abdominal wall if that's our primary mode of inhalation, if we're always just breathing down into the belly. So when we contain that, the pressure can go elsewhere. That frees up motion at the shoulder joint. And if we can also learn to push pressure down into the pelvis, we can get the bones of the pelvis to actually move nicely as well, which is going to allow for more relative motion of the hip. So we're essentially teaching our bodies first how to get good diaphragm connection, how to get the diaphragm to have full excursion, how to get these lower ribs to be able to move effectively, a lot of times to be able to exhale and come down and in effectively, and then maintaining that tension to be able to push it elsewhere in the body. So one of the terms that we hear in the movement space is 360 breathing. And what I see a lot with 360 breathing, and there's nothing wrong with it, is a focus on 360 breathing here. So it's like I would need to be able to inhale and expand my ribs. Okay, that's great. But when I did that, did I expand up here? Did I expand here? Was I able to push pressure down in my pelvis? And so that's what I think of as 360 breathing. It's the ability to manage pressure between the thorax and the pelvis. And so the second foundation, which is what was open today, the stack. And the stack is, I don't know that I love the term, but it's just basically, how is your thorax over your pelvis? Everybody's going to have a different way of centering their mass based on past movement history, how much they sit, how much they stand, many different things. And I want you to understand how to best manage your body and the pressure inside your body when you are doing exercises like squats, hinges, deadlifts, lunges, anything that you're doing, rowing, pushing, pulling. Because once you can understand that, you're actually freeing up motion while you are exercising versus potentially restricting motion when you need to move. So those are the two foundations that are open up today. We may get in, once everybody introduces themselves, into more of the hip shifting, protraction, and co-contractions. Those are day 3, 4, and 5. But really, if I taught somebody nothing else in their entire life and they came to me and all they needed, and they could like only do one session with me and I'd never see them again, these are the two things that I'm going to talk to them about. And with my clients, these are the two things that I'm going to reiterate over and over and over. And I'm going to teach them how to do them themselves without me. Because if they can do that, I've just given them the capability to make sure that their body is okay. And that with they're working with somebody else, they're not with me, they're by themselves. There's a lot of restorative capabilities within these two concepts. So having said all that, I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to let Raleigh talk first. And Raleigh teaches for Empowered Performance, and she teaches the foot section. So she does foot biomechanics, and she literally is the foot whisperer. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you all a little bit about her.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Raleigh. I'm originally from Bulgaria, but I live in England. So I'm based in England for the last 20 years. I'm personal trainer, and for the last 4 years, due to the pandemic and the global shutting down, I transitioned to mainly online coaching. And this was the time when I started I was part of the first Empower Performance. So I started coaching mainly online. As Katie said, I'm fascinated about the foot. I look at people's feet when they walk. I assess a lot of feet. But I also train clients one-to-one. I have a small group coaching people online as well. And then since last year, Katie encouraged me to start my functional foot course, which is 4 weeks. And that's been my new passion. So that's a little bit about me. Do I need to say how I use the principles, or we're going to?
Yeah, I would love for you to just go ahead and talk about what you use most with your clients to, considering your passion.
Okay, so I'll go a little bit back when I started Empower Performance, because I was completely different trainer, I guess, a coach. I was training only in-person clients, one-to-one mainly, few classes in a gym, like a general gym, nothing specific. And then when I start Empower Performance, I had a lot of understanding about strength training, weight loss. I had the idea what is diaphragmatic breathing, But I had a lot of things which were confused in my brain, or at least what they teach you in the mainstream of fitness about, as Kate said, 360 breathing. But if you go on YouTube and check 5 different videos, you're going to see 5 different things. So I was always very confused. Is it 360 breathing? Is it belly breathing? Is it chest breathing? What's going on? Where that pressure goes? But what I learned, obviously, the breath is very important. How we breathe is very important. There are so many different ways how we can coach this. But what I probably use the most is just understanding the person in front of me, what is their strategy and how they breathing, or how they getting that stuck, or where is their what is their alignment when they're standing or their resting posture, and then address that and just give them the experience they're missing, give them that breath that they're missing, expanding, creating space where they're missing, instead of really going into it have to be only belly breathing and that's the only way, or it have to be just chest breathing, or it have to be just like a side breathing. So truly, we're all so unique, and we need different things. So that's the main thing I kind of learn and start using from EP. Obviously, the main principles as a stack and the diaphragmatic breathing, like a connection with the pelvic floor. But for me, it was just start exploring and looking at movement instead of concentrating on specific place, specific muscle, and then really calling like this is weak and this is strong, instead of like, for me, is what is missing. That's what I'm looking, what I'm searching, and that's what I'm trying to coach other people who are doing my course, but also like the people who are like working with me. Hope that helps.
That's very helpful. I think you can never come back to 2 things that you said was creativity. And I think in this industry, your own intuitive, creative abilities to work with your clients can be taken away from you really quick if you get stuck into one system. And that's what I loved about you and why I was like, well, you come teach this for me, because you were like, I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me. And you're just creatively processing your own way. And I just think that's such an important skill to have. And then the second thing, just that you're giving a unique perspective to every single person, because everybody is different, and just recognize that not one way of breathing is going to work for everybody.
Yeah. And that's why there are like different variation, different exercise in the portal, because everyone gonna need slightly different thing. And we can't really say what's the right thing for you. You have to try it yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes even when we do an assessment and we think we know, we've had so many case studies in the academy where like, we're doing an assessment, we think we know what they need, and then it doesn't work. Okay, well, you got to re-strategize and figure out something. Why isn't it working? So yeah, nice to have lots of things in the back pocket. So I hope you guys will go in there and try the waterfall breathing, the diaphragm releases, the psoas release, all that kind of helps with some of the breath work if you struggle with it. So I'm going to move on to Joy, who teaches for EP and makes everybody in there feel like they're not so overwhelmed. She has a great way of simplifying these concepts.
Yeah, so hi, I am Joy. And like Katie said, one of the things that I do in EP is give a presentation on how to handle overwhelm. And I'll go into a little bit of like what I do in my business, but the reason I give that is because I always joke about being the one who just like doesn't understand anything or never gets it, or it's always over my head. And I took EP in 2021, and I swear it took me like 2 years until I finally was like, oh, I get that. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't implementing things like the whole way through. And I came into EP literally because Allison, who is one of the speakers today, was like, oh, you should just take this course. And I legit had no idea what it was. I was like, oh, okay. She says it's good. I'll take it. And then my mind was just completely blown, like completely blown in the best way possible. So this is a good segue into what I do. I am a coach for pregnant and postpartum rock climbers. And I'm sure some of you are like, what like did she just say? But that is exactly who I coach. I coach pregnant and postpartum rock climbers. I started out really just more of like in the whole pregnant postpartum space, but I have been a climber for almost 15 years now. And I just really, decided that there's no information out there for pregnant and postpartum climbers. And for anyone who is in a lifestyle sport, you don't stop your sport when you get pregnant or postpartum. So, and climbing is very much a lifestyle sport where you want to be able to continue. A lot of your social circles are based around climbing, and it is largely a part of your identity. So, I just decided that I was going to get in a little rowboat on my own and just start rowing. And anyway, so that's where I'm at today. And I use so many parts of EP in what I do, but one of the things that I think has helped make a huge difference in the women I work with is being able to teach about the stacked position, but I do it in a little bit of a, I guess you could say, like unique way. So climbers use this thing called a hangboard. And a hangboard is actually, I have one. If you can see it hanging, like right there, it's basically kind of like it's not a pull-up bar, and there are edges in there, and you will put your fingers in the edges and you hang from the edges because we do a lot of finger training. And oh, hi, Zai, climber. Anyway, she knows what that is, a fingerboard. Now, when you're on a fingerboard, a lot of times climbers have just been kind of like coached, told, or they just do it instinctually just to go into a lot of extension. So their pelvis dumps way forward. They're kind of like flaring the ribs and they're like pulling down and like really retracting the shoulder blades and all that sort of stuff. Now, anyone who is, I'll say, a little more dedicated or serious about climbing is going to be doing training on a hangboard, period. Like it's just something that you do as a climber. So I have been able to really help people understand what this stacked position is using a hangboard, because they're going to be there, and it's actually pretty, I'm not going to say easy, but I've found it a lot better way for me to kind of help them understand how these things feel. And like, we're looking for this sort of feeling in our lower abs, or we're looking for this kind of shape almost, if you will, with the lower ribs and whatnot. So that's been really fun. And it also helps to create a lot of buy-in for these climbers, especially the postpartum moms, because yes, I 100% agree that like getting on the ground, doing some breathing drills, we need that. We need to be able to have that kind of like stillness and be able to tap into those things. But the people that I'm working with, most of the time, they're like, yeah, but like, I want to go climbing. I just had a baby. Now I don't have a bump anymore and I want to go climbing. So I'm able to use the hangboard to kind of facilitate them kind of reconnecting with their core, their pelvic floor. And I mean, I teach them how to train fast twitch muscles with their pelvic floor on the hangboard. We teach pelvic floor endurance on the hangboard. Like it's been really, really cool. And that's just one of the ways that I've been able to kind of make EP my own, if you will. But another way that I have, and this is a little bit outside the box, but is just to literally have the confidence to pursue things like this, because I can tell you right now that being one of the only people that is handing out this kind of information around climbing during pregnancy or climbing postpartum, and being the only person in the climbing space that's talking about the pelvic floor, like, it's not easy just to be the only one who's doing it. And Katie literally armed me with information, but also just like confidence, like, no, you can do this. Like, and, always whenever I'd be like, I don't understand, I can't. And, the whole entire group is just so supportive. Like, yes, you do, Joy. You're smarter than you think. Like, you can do this. So that isn't like directly applying concepts, but that is one of the just huge takeaways, that it gave me so much ability to believe in myself and literally like just keep going, because it's not easy to just keep going, when you're a business of one. And I'm sure any of the other trainers out there will appreciate this. Sometimes you're just like, oh my God, what am I even doing right now? But yeah, like to say life-changing would be an understatement. But yeah, that's just like a little bit about Joy.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah.
You're Joy always. If you follow her on Instagram, literally, like I've never seen someone smile so much. And again, that comes back to your creative thinking, which I think like that for me, it's literally on my Instagram bio for the reason. I don't think people really know why, but it's because I believe that when we are thinking creatively, it is a time of deep presence. And when we are in a state of deep presence, the things we come up with in our minds actually are more impactful for others. And so being able, if you are a movement teacher, to somehow find a creative way to access these concepts, actually, I think ends up creating more things for people that are more beneficial. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of creativity. But Cynthia had a great question, which you kind of touched on. So she said, and I get this all the time, how do you convince clients that focusing on breathing is worth the time and focus? A lot of my clients come in and roll their eyes. And when I say we are starting with breathing, when it doesn't come easily, they want to just move on to the next exercise. When we work on breathing, they just check the box and have a hard time getting the nuance of doing it right. And they want to just check the box and move on to the real workout. Totally get this. Okay. This is like my life. And it was my life for 10 years before I started this course, because I had all these clients that I was experimenting with. And unfortunately, I didn't realize in the beginning that I could take these concepts, which I learned from the Postural Restoration Institute, that were more lower level breathing drills, like on the floor or retro stepping on stairs or something like that. And it took me like a year or two in, and I realized I can use the exact same principles. Like I understand where they want me to get this expansion. I can use the same principles and put someone in the same position while they're doing a strength training exercise. And I don't have to necessarily even coach the breathing. It's just the position itself. They're breathing. People are breathing 20, 30,000 times a day. So while they're working out, they're breathing. And so they're in that position, and there's a pumping mechanism inside of them. And you can almost, I like to think of it as like suction cups between the organs, between the diaphragms, and all that suctioning is happening as that person is doing an activity, whether it's a row or a squat. And so I might say, I understand that this person needs to create more core connection so that they can get posterior expansion. I'm going to give them a front squat instead of a back squat. And so it helps me to clarify what type of exercises are going to work for them. And so for some people, all we're doing the breathing for is just in the first session. And so we do an assessment in EP. It's like five activities. They're active range of motion testing. And then we use that assessment to pick a position, and we have them breathe in that position. And then we reassess. And if we got good changes, that right there just told me everything their body needs. It could be more expansion on the left, posterior, right anterior, right side body. And then I get to decide what kind of exercises I'm going to choose to help them generate better length tension relationships from the inside out while they're exercising. Hopefully that's a big mouthful on that question, but I think it's one I get a lot. And I have clients, one in particular, it's been with me for 10 years now. He does one breathing thing at the end of the workout. It's usually the same thing. It's like a sideline with a twist, and I just have him inhale and let his rib cage kind of relax. That's it. Everything else we do is right into exercise. I just know what exercises to give to him. He's just not into it, but it works fine for him too. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to answer that. Allison.
I think Raleigh wanted to add on to your answer real quick first. She put in the comment.
I think that I just wanted to say that obviously it's very helpful to understand the body and just like choose the hard exercises. But another way how I add a breathing exercise with these hard clients who doesn't really want to do it, or they just don't understand the benefit, is I combine a very hard exercise for them and follow up with a breathing exercise. So they're actually happy to do it because they feel like muscularly tired. So they just need that time. So I actually use that time for breathing. So I can start adding a little bit. And also I might use the connection between the exercise they perform with the breathing, and say, like, if they're performing the exercise better, that I just try to guide them to so they understand that they're doing better, so they start asking for more. But that's another way how you can start tricking clients to do the breathing with something else they like to do and they need it, like the breathing after that.
Can I add in one more thing? So Cynthia, I think, was who asked this question. I literally asked this same question when I was going through EP. Shantae Cofield came and spoke for the group, and I literally asked, how do I get clients to buy into the breathing stuff? And I will always remember Shantae was like, well, are you bought in? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. So they can like sense your energy around it. And if you're like, I like learned this new stuff, but like, we don't have to try it, but we could try it if you like, just do you want to just be like, hey, I'm so excited to teach you this. And then also teach them the one that you like the best. Maybe if it's your first time doing it, don't even worry necessarily what they might need. Just teach them the one that you understand the most, and that you can feel the most, because that's the one you're going to feel most confident about. And like, do it for, 3 minutes and then be like, okay, that was awesome. Now we're going to go do, our other stuff. Because I got like really caught up in the breathing stuff for a while. And I think you just have to figure out like the right dose and titration for the kind of clients you have. And then if you're coaching in person, like who you're working with, but just making sure that you're really excited about it when you're presenting it to them can make a huge difference as well.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Allison Helms.
My turn. All right. So I have something to add to that whole conversation too, but I think it'll make more sense after I introduce myself and what I do. So I am a women's strength and running coach, but that has not always been my career. I actually started as an engineer. My PhD is in chemical engineering. And I struggled heavily returning. I've been a runner my entire life. Returning to running after having my first child was like really hard. I guess I shouldn't say hard because I just like kept doing it, but my back hurt. I peed my pants the whole time, like constant neck tension, like everything just felt wrong. And like Joyce said, it's a lifestyle sport. Like running is part of like who I am, what I do. It was a source of most of my friendships. Like it was everything to me. So getting to be able to do it in a way that felt good, I didn't pee and it didn't hurt, was very important to me. So I actually got really into the strength training side of it, became a certified personal trainer through that, like went through all the pelvic floor physical therapy thing. And the whole time going through that over the years, it was like collecting another piece to the puzzle. But it's still like the pieces to the puzzle were like, I was missing the edge pieces is like a way to like give the analogy. Like it wasn't coming together until I found Katie and in the Empower Performance program. Like it really did change everything, because what I was missing was exactly these fundamentals. Like it was like, oh, like Katie was just like, here, this is like the stuff that you need. And I'm not saying that like that it was easy. Like Joyce said, you got to struggle with it. And above all, I think you need to like actually take action in applying it. And this is why I think the way that Katie has this organized is so great, because you're doing something every day to feel it in your own body. And for me, going through Empower Performance, I had the application of like, because I coach runners, it was, how does this affect running? How does this affect running? How does this affect running? And it really helped create my own framework. So this course gives you the foundations, the fundamentals, and then Empower Performance, if you decide to go into that, will help you like dig deeper. But ultimately it's about like feeling it in your own body and creating like your own understanding and system with it, like putting together your like own puzzle. And I really like to reiterate Joy's comment about like the confidence. I think because the things that we talk about, the breathing is becoming a lot more mainstream. But the things we talk about, hip shifting and co-contractions, that's definitely not mainstream in the runner's world. And being able to show up and talk about these things and talk through these things with the Empower Performance ladies, and there are some men, but just like, especially being a woman in this space, I always felt like when I put my ideas out there, men were very quick to judge. But this group just lifted me up so much that it's just been like a complete game changer for my body, for like the way I coach my clients, for like in my confidence in everything. And then, you know, with the whole breathing buy-in thing, I think runners specifically like love their stats. And I don't know, like, I don't know how many of you like are runners on here or into endurance sports, but like these crazy breathing resistance trainers are becoming like all the rage now. I get ads every day. They're like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for these things. And it's like, what's cool to me is you don't need any of that. If you just learn how to like apply these tools and the fundamentals of your body, like it's all about the strength of your diaphragm, which is related to the way that you breathe and the way that you stack and the way that you rotate and move, which is what you'll kind of get to more with the hip shifting and the protraction stuff. Like your breath is like your, I don't know, this is going to be dumb, but I can't remember how many vital signs you have, right? Blood pressure, I'm blanking on all of them right now, temperature, but your breath is like one of them, which one we don't think of. But once you tune into that, it becomes like a complete game changer for overall like health, performance, mental health. Like there are so many ramifications of just like that piece. And I think it always, you know, the hardest part is getting Nicole's literally running on the treadmill right now. I think the hardest part about all of that is like getting the buy-in. So like tying it back to, you know, the things that Katie and Raleigh and Joy talked about, but also like the stuff that people care about. Like I haven't met a runner that doesn't like get like neck tension and all this stuff at the end of the run because they fall into a shallow breathing pattern as they run and they're not using the diaphragm. And if we can just be like, okay, that's a sign, let's remember to breathe. Or like chronic hip flexor tension or hamstring tightness, like all that is the stack. So relating the things that like they care about, and Raleigh could tell you all about how the foot is related to how you orient your center of mass like over the foot. All those things matter. The things that they feel in their body are related to those two things. And it, like Katie said, if you just do those two things, it's huge.
That's awesome, Allison. And just to add on to that, I will say that, you know, what we're doing when I think about the breath and its impact on movement is what we're kind of talking about here. But from a physiological perspective, those things have a lot of carryover back and forth. So even if you're in the movement space and you work with people on things like nutrition and sort of mental health aspects of health, and you're coaching your clients and they're struggling, well, if they literally, and you'll see in the portal, there's a video of Lana, who's amazing, and she ended up doing EP this last time, but every time she tried to do her exhale, she got sort of a fight or flight response. And so we had to come at it from, we've got to get more space in your rib cage so you can tolerate carbon dioxide better. Then we can start training the physiological side of things. And then you're going to feel better mentally. Now, if you have somebody who's reaching for food every time they're having, you know, anxiety, and they don't understand that their mental state and potentially the change of the shape of their rib cage is contributing to an inability to manage carbon dioxide and breathe well, they may be missing out on something that could really help them to calm their nervous system and be able to make a better decision. So it really just like encompasses so much. And we do get into that in EP because even more so probably than we ever have, because I do think it's so important to recognize that, yes, we're talking about it from a movement lens. and everybody wants to be a better trainer and get people moving really well. But underlying that is a lot of people's stuff. And if you've been a trainer for as long as I have, you feel like a mental health counselor sometimes, and you're like, I'm not qualified. But now I feel so much more qualified to be like, let's take a few breaths. Let's calm down before we start this session. Maybe I'm not going to stimulate their nervous system as much. Maybe I'm going to do something different to prep their workout. Maybe I am going to get their nervous system up because they're kind of down from the day. So even learning like how you can help someone regulate with different types of exercises, I call them overcoming or yielding, those types of exercises can kind of teach someone to either kind of come down and let go or amp them up quite a bit. So that component's really cool too. Anshul, I'll reach out, maybe just send me a message on the community page, because this one might be a little bit hard to answer here today about the spasms of the diaphragm, but I'm guessing it could potentially be an inability to eccentrically load the diaphragm, which just means ascend up. And a lot of time that could be because the person is having a hard time managing carbon dioxide and getting used to the feeling of letting that build up and sit in their system for a while. And so they kind of get like a spastic response, and the diaphragm can't like just let go. And then that again could also be because the position that the ribs have changed into over time because of faulty breathing patterns, unknown faulty breathing patterns. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stacy?
Hi. Yeah, I'm Stacy. I have been a personal trainer for 20 years, and I found Katie for like the beta testing of Empowered Performance, and I don't know, I owe so much to her. Just all the things I liked doing after I had kids, I couldn't do anymore. So I was very much into kettlebells, powerlifting, yoga. I was like a figure competitor, and I had severe lower back pain and just like a hypertonic pelvic floor. And just, it felt like everything that I had worked so hard was just like ripped away from me. And she was the one that kind of just like unlocked everything for me. So you can't skip steps, right? This whole like breathing, the stack. A big thing for me was like integrating rotation into my strength training, right? Like just changing the way I thought about strength training. I'll always make a joke, like I turned into like SpongeBob SquarePants, like after I had a baby, and like that literally was what killed me. Like I had to learn to like rotate at the rib cage and rotate at the pelvis and find length through my glutes. So like, sure, the breath in the stack, but like rotation at the rib cage, at the pelvis. I think it took me 3.5 years to lengthen my glutes or like breathe all the way down to my vagina and my asshole. Like it just takes time, but like you have access to Katie's brain. Like, I mean, that waterfall breathing, right? I haven't heard of that from anyone else. Like if we're all, like a lot of us on this call are women, we have narrow rib cages, like we can actually get access into those places with that waterfall breath. She just has a wild brain, and she shares it with everybody that's in EP. So I think that's one of the biggest things, and everybody has their own thing, but like I have been going to like Alchemy. She does Alchemy Strength on Wednesdays, and just getting creative with the way that you strength train. Going on with Cynthia's question is like, you can squat, you can do push-ups and inhale on the way down. Like, just changing the way, not just like inhaling down and relaxing the pelvic floor. Like, what if you exhale down? Just giving yourself permission to think outside of the box. And along with Cynthia's question, I think I was like on a podcast with Katie a long time ago. And she was like to me, or an interview you did, you're like, how do you make people do it? I'm like, it fucking changed my life. Like, I'm very passionate about it. So like my clients, just like what Joy said, my clients are going to buy into whatever I say because they trust me. Like I've been working with them for whatever, 12, 15 years. And I never said what I do, but basically online, I run this Move Your Body membership, and it's strength and nutrition for women who maybe have like, you know, been strength training for 15, 20 years. They find themselves super compressed, super burnt out, just like stuff that isn't as mainstream, right? We're not going to be doing like we're going to look at people's bodies and give them back what they don't have access to based off of like an assessment. So it's like a membership that gives an assessment, and I'm trying to teach women like more about their structures and what their body actually needs to get back to the movements that they want to do. It doesn't mean we have to like bilaterally overhead press. Maybe we can add a rotation into that, or just like teaching people how to hinge properly. And you don't always have to like barbell back squat or, you know, straight bar deadlift, but we can get you back to those things progressively. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? I kind of just go on, but you're in the right place here.
Thank you, Stacy. Love you.
Thank you.
I was going to say something about what you just said. I think it was just like the idea that you do, I know you see some people in person, but you do have a lot of online following membership. And I think you do a great job of like keeping it simple, but still trying to address people's unique bodies by doing an actual assessment. And it's just proof that you don't have to do all these passive range of motion testing. You can do some simple testing and get a pretty good idea of how somebody's moving and where they might need something different in their life.
Well,
So.
and like, it's like, I could say like the opposite of what some people said, just because of what I don't do a lot of one-on-one. So I'm not going to do this crazy detailed assessment, but we're all a lot more similar than we are different. So we're all going to benefit from chest wall expansion, posterior expansion, like breathing all the way down. So like, can we do that? And then you can individually change things with people, right? So like I work with people in a small group. Sure, I can give them different variations of every exercise based off of me seeing them. Do you know what I mean? So it can work in so many different, like you could do this in live classes. You could do this in a membership. You could do this in small group training and one-on-one, right? Don't think that you're limited in that capacity.
Yeah. And it's really huge because that's where the space is going more and more is, you know, the competition. If you are more of a private trainer in a facility, you're competing with Orange Theory. And I mean, these big companies to try to pull people in where people just want to pay 20, 25 bucks for a workout, which is fine, but you got to figure out how to integrate things that might be more beneficial and, you know, be able to level up your business too, just like these big companies, and keep people coming in the door. It's hard. Yeah. Planet Fitness. I don't know if we can compete with them. It's like $15 a month or something. It's impossible. All right, Ashley Berry took over all the programming for EP. She's a fantastic programmer doing online programming. We have basically in Empowered Performance, you get training on Train Heroic, and I did it for years. And for the academy afterwards, the membership afterwards, because people wanted to keep going and wanted to have training every month. So, and then I was like, Ashley's really good at this. She's always coming up with good exercises. I was like, can you take this over for me? So Ashley, maybe you can speak about what you do.
Hi, everyone. I am Ashley. I live just outside Chicago. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I have been for 13 years now. I work mostly with athletes or former competitive athletes. So even I have clients between the ages of 12 and 65. And even the ones that are, you know, the older population, they're still active. So they're tennis players or they're coaches that have other athletes. And when I first found Katie, it was like, I think 2020. And I kind of, like Allison had said, felt like I was just like missing pieces. I learned, 10, 15 years ago, it just seemed like there was kind of one main group of fitness professionals that everyone kind of learned from. And so when I first met Katie and first started doing EP, I had to do a lot of like unlearning and a lot of giving myself permission to try new things because a lot of what she taught were things I had never heard or were just different than what I had heard. So when I started implementing some of the things, especially like the breathing, I started with myself and started to see changes, and then having a better understanding of how like the breathing and the stacked positions carry over into movements and your ability to access positions and range of motion. And I started seeing my clients improve. And because I have a lot of athletes and former athletes, they actually needed more than just the lower level breathing. So when I started understanding like why we're using a heel lift, when you would use a heel lift for squats, how all these different variations, they were again seeing these changes, and it, because I was buying in so much, like Joy said, they were buying in. And so because the older clients that I have that are now coaching younger athletes are able to take some of these concepts too and carry it over to them. And so like the high school athletes I have, I tend to coach from like a place of education too. I know some trainers will say like, oh, they just want to come in and work out. Like they don't care about this stuff. But the people I have all ask. Like, they're like, what is this doing? How is this going to help? Why are we doing it this way? And they want to know. And it's so empowering to them to be able to feel like they have an understanding that they can make choices for their own body then. And with the breathing positions, you know, the lower level stuff that was mentioned, how it's hard to sometimes get people to buy in. Like Katie said, I will just use it at the end. And by that point, they've worked hard enough that they're like, okay, like I'm cool with like bringing my nervous system down in these positions. And then it's stuff that they have access at home too. So like my high school athletes, I work at a pretty competitive high school. I coach softball there, and to give them positions that they can use, you know, after practice, after a game, is so empowering to them. And that's something that I'm hoping, because of the confidence they build in the gym space and with these, you know, positions, will carry over to their life later, you know, after college, in college. So it's been life-changing, honestly. Empowered performance, it's been incredible. And you know, I have said this to Katie, but like I'm all about leaving spaces better than you found it, and I truly believe Katie has with the fitness and wellness space. And so I'm excited to see the next couple of years where this goes, where we all go, because she has an incredible group of people for this group.
Thank you, Ashley. I really couldn't do it without you. I was thinking the other day, like I was overwhelmed and trying to program for a one-on-one client. I had two people like come up at the exact same day. And I was like, oh my God, if I was still doing the programming for EP plus all this, I think I'd be dying. But also one of the things I love, and I want to mention this, is that you're really creative in your exercises, but also thoughtful. So it's one thing to take an exercise and just like do something random because it's looks cool and it looks fun. And, you know, our clients like that, so we can do that. But it's another thing to understand the physical qualities that the exercise is giving people. So Ashley, if you were to like go on her YouTube or look at all of her videos or the programming, things look like unique and exciting and fun. But I know that in her brain, she's like, this is going to create more stiffness in the connective tissue. This is going to create more compliance in the connective tissue, specifically at this joint. And this joint needs this, and this joint needs that. And so she's thinking ahead of the game. And that's some of the stuff we talk about in EP too, as well. So she can keep her athletes maintaining not just good position and strength, but thinking about the non-contractile tissue, which is so important in that population. It's really important for everybody, but I know that you think about that a lot in the workout.
Yeah, I do. My clients joke because they'll obviously ask, you know, why are we doing this? And so when I explain it, they're like, how do you do this? And I joke that I just have like drop down menus. Like I know what I want to happen. So I like pull from these drop down menus of things. And if they don't work, you can always change it. Like there, you know, I think again, unlearning some of those arbitrary rules has been very, very, very helpful for this.
Yeah. And programming is full of a lot of arbitrary rules. So I'm a CSCS, and you know, NSCA is great, but like if you look in that manual, like half of that stuff just doesn't work for people. It's you know, for strength and conditioning population, and even with NASM and ACE, like there's not a lot of guidance. But I guess it's the type of guidance. It's the guidance that like you have certain principles you're trying to achieve and understand, and you've got certain qualities in a person on top of their wants, and you've got to collectively think about all that and put it together in a program that actually makes sense, so you get from point A to point B, not because somebody said this is how you get from point A to point B and didn't take into account that this one person is going to be very different than the next person. So the programming aspect is pretty huge.
And learning from you, like the difference between, I know we like call it like dead man's anatomy, but actually how changing the structure and changing the position of joints changes what's happening at the muscular level. And that to me was like game changing, because I had always thought of things as just, and not that this isn't a good thing. It's a good place to start to understand like hinging, knee dominant, and we understand those things, but to actually comprehend how those, certain positions or certain load or certain constraints around an exercise can change what's happening like at the muscular level is just really game changing.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say too that touching on how Ashley was just kind of talking about like backtracking or pulling back a little bit in the beginning. I heard this analogy the other day and I was like, I love it. So they were basically like thinking about a rubber band, right? So if a rubber band, you're just like holding it and it's super loose and you pull it back, what happens when you let it go? It gets to go forward like with force. It gets to increase speed, like it increases power, all those other things. And like I think that's exactly what happens with empowered performance is like you pull people back a little bit and you give them what they need, so then you can let them go and they can explode and like do amazing things, because that's literally like what happens. It's like you just give people the tools to be able to be like, all right, go explode. Like, like go be your best self or like your best trainer. But yeah, it was just, I thought of that when Ashley was kind of like talking in the beginning about the rubber band, and I don't know, I loved it.
That was like the best analogy I've ever heard.
I definitely had a point in time though that I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. That's what it felt like. And then you kind of get past that and it's like, okay, so that was a good foundation. And now let's build on it with what we're learning through EP. And also because Katie brings so many different lenses in, you don't feel like it's just one thing you're learning about. Like you're getting an understanding of different systems and people's, different people's lenses and their approach to movement, and you get to take what works for you and what works for your clients from that.
Thank you, Ashley. So does anybody have any questions that's on the call right now? Want to ask anything? You can unmute too, or you can just type it in the chat. I know we had a few that we've kind of answered as we've gone. Anybody typing?
Don't be shy.
So if you have never done this 5-day fundamentals, just know that yesterday we did the mastering the breath. Just go through it. It's like 15-20 minutes if you do the extra little bonus things. Today is all about the orientation of the thorax over the pelvis. That is, again, just some pre-recorded videos. But after that, there's a live recorded video from the last time where we coach somebody through the squat and go a little bit deeper into these concepts. And I take you through a passive inhale versus a passive exhale and an active inhale versus an active exhale. So you can kind of understand more about it. So they're kind of application based as well. And then you're going to go into hip shifting, which, believe it or not, I mean, it sounds so stupid. It's like, oh, well, I can shift to my right hip, I shift to my left hip. Shockingly, it can be really hard to open up the back of your hips and to get some length back there and really know if you're owning that position. So that's what helps you get relative motion at the pelvis in a more exercise, from a more exercise lens. And then you're going to go through protraction, because that is another thing that I believe is just so intimately connected with good movement from the inside out, because we can try to strengthen serratus all day long, but if our rib cage is so compressed that we can't get our scapula to become congruent with the rib cage, our serratus is never going to have the correct link tension relationship to be able to do what it needs to do. So that's why protraction is in here, because it's such a huge piece to, and speaks to the importance of this inside out breathing approach. And then the last day is co-contractions, which I almost like wish there was a better term for this, but it's basically just contracting all the muscles around a joint and learning in EP, we go into like an understanding of motor learning and why we might use something like that versus standing on a Bosu ball. Because co-contractions actually help to increase the tension throughout our bodies and activate more muscle spindles, so our brains can be ready for activities that have less ground contact time. So the old school way of thinking I'm balancing on a stability ball, or I'm, on an unstable surface, that doesn't really have the same outcomes that we think it does. So the co-contractions are the basis for understanding that. And this course, we do them in the lower limb, but they're full body co-contractions, upper body co-contractions. And that helps you to, helps make you faster and a little more stiff in your body, so you can be more reactive, because it's a huge component that's missing, in my opinion, for especially the Gen Pop. Like, we do a lot of slow and controlled and sensory-based things. We need to get people moving. Like, we need to get people prepared for life, not just good in a gym. Those are two very different things. So that's going to be the last day. And then after that, there's one more recorded live call that's in the portal, and it's on programming. And in that call, there's actually a whole workout that you can try. So on the last day, you'll be able to go in, you'll have gone through all the concepts, and you'll be able to do a workout that utilizes every concept in the course. So you can it's like a YouTube series that you can follow, and it has do 2 sets of 10 or whatever, as a sample for you guys to understand. Let's see. Yeah, the bear is actually going to be as part of the protraction in the portal. So you'll see that tomorrow. I'll open up that section. Yeah, it's much harder than it looks. Yeah. Any questions? You guys are so quiet.
Say, anyone who thinks they can plank for like 2 minutes has never done a bear like that.
Clients feel bad about themselves if you do a plank challenge, put a whole new meaning.
Katie, there's one question in the comments from Katie Creamer. Is there a good way to remember where the breath is going, where we are opening and where we are breathing in a different position? I struggle with that, for example, prone versus supine, and if that's open up the anterior or posterior places.
Yeah, so Katie, have you gone through the first fundamental yet?
I have, yep.
Okay. And so I think what I hear you saying is, is there a good way to remember, like a visualization cue? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, so if someone's feeling compressed, like in their upper chest, and we do like remembering which, either on your back or in a prone position, like what's going to open that up more. Yeah, if that makes sense, like which position is going to help with where someone is feeling compression.
Yeah, so if it is more in the chest wall, well, that's a very hard place. It is, but I always start someone on their back, because the floor acts as a constraint, so they can kind of keep their sternum lifted a little bit more. And if really compressed, you have to recognize, so as soon as you lay them down on their back, if they're this person, their head is going to struggle to get back to the floor, right? And that's going to close the airway. So you want to make sure you put a towel roll or something to support their neck into a little bit of lordosis, and keep their chin elevated slightly to keep the airway open, so they don't kind of have that panicky feeling.
Yeah.
And, you may, I'm not a manual therapist. I don't use my hands, but I do put my hands on my clients just to give them a little tactile feedback. And I do think that happens. It helps a lot. Even if I'm on a Zoom call, I'll say, can you picture my hand here? And I want you to feel like my hand. And you could even just use an object, but where you want to direct the air. So let's say they're exhaling and holding the ribs, a little tension in the abs. And when they breathe, if they're on their back, their head supported, their airways open, they take an inhale, it can start to come up into the chest wall. And if they breathe with their neck and all those muscles start coming on, have them slow down the inhale. You can even do that waterfall inhale, but just don't go all the way to the top. Just kind of a little bit of air in have them hold it, because sometimes that gives a sensation of like, oh, okay, I feel it now. Now do a little more.
Mhm.
Oh, I feel it more. Now a little more. And then have them exhale.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think
Thank
generally
you.
feel the easiest one is going to be like a hook line position where they're just breathing into their back. That's pretty much what I start most of my like newbie clients on.
Mhm.
Just 'cause it's easy. And like it's such an easy buy-in. You can be like, let's do your toe touch, and they're limited. And then you
Yeah.
have 15, 20 breaths and a rock back, and you're like, touch your toes, and they're like, wow.
Yeah.
Well, we got
Awesome. Thank you.
into his breathing. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
I have a question concerning hi, I'm Marilyn. Concerning more like I usually when I work out and all my life I was very intense, and it brought me a lot of stuff, it brought me a lot of results. But what I've realized with the breathing is how to be relaxed and be performant. So, and sometimes what happens is when I'm like a little more I don't know, stressed or something, and I do that kind of breathing, I'll see that I'm tensing everything up, and I'm like, I can't get that relief of that like relaxation of like the whole body, that the breathing awareness you're trying to give us. And I've realized that when I do it, let's say you're teaching me, I'm just listening to your voice, I get to a more relaxed, it's more simple, and I get the results that I want. So what I'm saying is like sometimes you'll have an individual that's a little like me, always like going to the max and everything, and they won't get that beneficial um results that you're telling us to get with that awareness and that 360 breathing. So just being aware of what type of client we have is helps me a lot. Like sometimes there's people that are just always like so like you know, them I'll want them to really get to that max intention, and some I have to just bring them back and stay in that little level of breathing and that little flow. So thank you for that, because I was trying to realize why is it does it feel good when Katie tells me how to do it than when I'm teaching myself. So
Well,
yeah.
just someone else finally coaching you and you getting to like take a break, you know. But yeah, I can appreciate that. And we talk about this in EP, like towards week 11, I have this system restoration presentation I give, and we talk about, you know, some people you're going to have to start with just something like box breathing. It's not a performance type breathing. It's not trying to change movement options. It's literally just to down regulate the nervous system. Humming. We talk about all kinds of different ways that you can do that using the breath. And then if they can get in a better state and they can manage carbon dioxide better, then they can start bumping into some of these practices we're talking about where you're closing off certain areas to expand other areas. Because for some people, you put them in there and it's like fight or flight, and you're not going to get any good movement changes if they're in fight or flight. Everything's going to shut down. So that's a really important point to think about. And sometimes that is in the very athletic population harder because they're so driven. We, myself included, are so used to shutting down our emotions to get the job done. And so the body is like, you want me to do what? I'm not going to do that. So yeah, and that's the thing. I'll never forget being in a course. It's something I've talked about many times, and standing in front of the course, and they were taking us through a drill where we're supposed to be able to perceive our left side and really own that left side and stand on my left foot and all this stuff. And I guess I wasn't doing it right because I couldn't perceive it because my body was not in a place to be able to accept what they were asking me to do. And I was called out. I don't think the intention was bad, but like, you're not even close to being in the right position in front of everybody. And I was like, it really hurt. Like inside, I thought, what's wrong with me? And so I think the most important thing I try to impress upon people is you never want to come at this as if something is wrong with anybody. And so knowing where to start with them is really important, because if you give them something that's too hard and too complicated, it makes them feel like they're not good enough and they can't do it. So simple is better. And then you can always add on complexity week by week if you have the luxury of working with somebody all the time. But just being aware that if you're not getting outcomes, it's okay to just be like, that was great. You did awesome. And then move on to the next thing. Just, forget it. They'll have no idea. And never make it like, because I actually just had a consult the other day and she said, yeah, I went to a PRI therapist and this exercise she wanted me to do was just really, really hard. She had massive pelvic floor tearing of her during her birth. And she was trying to get her to do this really complex exercise, but she'd never even tried to just breathe down into her pelvic floor. So you can imagine how scary and how much fear there is just to do that when you have prolapse and so much tearing. And she said she was getting frustrated with me because I wasn't doing it right. And I was like, this poor woman had a traumatic birth. Her body is just not her body. And so always kind of remembering, I was like, well, has anybody ever talked to you about breathing down into your pelvic floor? And she's in pelvic floor physical therapy. No one. And I was like, well, we're going to start there. So let's find your rectum. I need you to put your fingers in there and we're going to breathe and see what this is like, So sometimes you really have to take like 5 steps back. But I couldn't have given her the type of breathing that you guys are doing in the fundamentals, because I don't think she would have been ready for that if she didn't understand what it felt like to be able to breathe down and feel safe.
So this is a very different, like, feeling safe application. But when Marilyn was talking about being able to, kind of know when you need to ramp things up or let things tone down a little bit. So another way that I teach the climbers that I work with to use, like, tap into the breathing is when they are literally in a scary spot while climbing, because a lot of climbing involves falling. There's like a lot of falling. 99.9% of the time, the falls are like completely safe. We're not talking about Alex Honnold shit here. Like, it's very different than that. But if, like, I'll just use myself, for example, if I'm above my last piece of gear and I know that there are a couple of moves coming up that are quite hard, and I literally need to be able to, like, bring myself down a little bit before I try to go and execute that. Because if I go into it like flustered and like, it's going to make everything even more like augmented. Like I won't be able to really focus and whatnot. And especially when you get into more like performance type climbing, where you're trying to climb harder things, you really have to be able to stay calm through situations that are physically and mentally taxing. So it's like just this amazing way that I have been able to learn this from Katie, like on the floor, and then in ways that are not scary per se to me. So then I can then like try it out in places that are more mentally taxing, and then being able to help other people do the same thing. And I'm sure there's like other coaches in EP that do different performance oriented things that, can apply it the same way. But it has been like really cool to be able to look around and like perceive like, this is scary right now, but to be able to like breathe and then do the next hard thing and like, oh, I did it. That was cool. I did it. So
I wish I would have known this when I was a gymnast, like, it was just looking back how helpful it would have been to understand some of this stuff. Nobody was talking about that. We were just in massive extension patterns, fight or flight mode. I was yawning all the time because I couldn't manage carbon dioxide and throwing my body into backflips. So interesting. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you can relate if you were in sports when you were young. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Raleigh and Joy and Allison and Stacy and Ashley. And you guys can check them out. I'll send a follow-up email with all their Instagram accounts because they post great stuff on there too. If anybody has any questions, don't forget that you can join the community page. It's a separate portal on your, when you log in, and it just says Empowered Performance Community. If you click that, I'll be answering questions over there. And you can introduce yourself to other people too. You might meet somebody who's doing the same thing as you. A bunch of people have already been like, oh, hey, I do that too, whatever their modality is. So I'd love to see you guys over there. And if you're interested in EP, I'll be sending out at the end of this course on Friday, we'll be opening up the course, the actual Empower Performance course. And so if you're interested, I'll be sending out a separate discount code for this group of people that are in the 5-day fundamentals. So thank you guys so much. Thanks for hanging on, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.